right, guys, and welcome back to episode 10 of the Designated Players Podcast. That's right, 10, double digits. If we did this 10 more times, we'd be at 100. That's a century of episodes, and we will get there at some point, aren't we? But yeah, 10 episodes. We want to thank everybody who has listened, shared, followed along, commented, any interaction at all with this podcast. We want to say thank you. When we started this, we didn't know we were going to get to 10, let alone however many we're going to get to. But for everybody who's been a part of it, thank you. And I'm going to throw it over to Adam to introduce our guest for this week.
Yeah, so I'm very, very honored to introduce Jason Klein. He's the digital content manager of Andrew and my favorite League One team, Forward Madison FC. Jason, say hi.
Hello. I'm really happy to be on the Designated Players Podcast. I'm rocking my flock scarf representing our supporters group, and I'm delighted to be here.
Love it. He's already jumping right in the scarf of the week. I love the transition. It's so good. What do you got?
So Jason's got his flock scarf on.
Yeah.
Of course, granted, I have many more that I haven't seen the camera yet, but I figured, we have Jason on. I have to rock the Forward Madison. This is the same scarf I wore actually in our first episode.
Week 1.
So,
that's right.
Yeah, so bring it back. There are plenty more. I have not run out of scarves yet. Andrew can attest. I have so many more that will eventually be shown. But yeah. Andrew, what about you?
I am on to the very last soccer scarf that I've got, rocking my boys Everton. I'm also rocking a Birmingham City kit because it's also Random Kit Monday. So
is that a new thing now?
It is now because I've got one other random kit before I start going to baseball and football, and it's going to be a mess. Like we need to get this whole, delivery ban or whatever's going on lifted.
Well, your Everton scarf is the last scarf for now because Adam and I both agreed that you've got to get a Forward Madison one into your collection.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely is right, and it is going to be the first purchase as soon as I get some money freed up. I got to work a little bit more for that. I just cashed in my rent check, and yeah, I've got a little bit more time to wait.
No worries.
But yeah, so as you guys can see, we are missing one designated player. Connor's not feeling too great, so we had him stay on out for this one. So we hope you feel better, Con, when you're watching this, and we'll see you next week. But over to Adam to start things up.
Yeah. So before we go and dive deep into the best League One team and tell everyone listening why they should all be following, Jason, just give us a little bit about yourself, how you got started with the club.
And anything else.
Yeah, and
yeah, that's
anything else you might want to add.
Waiting for that. He just never ended.
Yeah.
So, like you said earlier to introduce me, I'm a digital content manager for Forward Madison. And I should preface this by saying that there's actually a team of us. There are two of us who work on the online stuff, me and Kuba Kirchesteniak. That's an approximation of how you say his name. But he's my boss, so he more oversees the overall marketing strategy. And then I'm in a lot of the day-to-day stuff. So almost all of the social media that you see is me. Most of the stuff on the website that you see is for me. And it means that I have a lot of the duties of interacting with fans on a day-to-day basis, which is, of course, something for Madison we probably put into the heart of our digital strategy, that you can reach fans online in a way that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So my background, it's funny because the way you get into this, it's never anything expected. Basically, I grew up around Indianapolis, and I was in high school when Indy 11 formed. I was a big soccer fan, but I didn't have a local team, so I latched on to Indy 11, and I met the club president, Peter Wilt, who was really fan-friendly, and I got to know him a little bit. And then when I went to college in Madison, I heard that he was coming here to start Madison Pro Soccer. I reached out and said, "Hey, Peter, do you remember me? Is there anything I can do to help out?" So he said, "Sure, we'll find a way to fit you in." And now, 2 years later, here I am.
Very nice. Obviously, Indy 11, a slightly bigger club, but in terms of numbers and obviously a bit history. But just to give our listeners a brief history of Forward Madison, they were founded in May of 2018. They play at Bree Stadium, and yeah, and they finished 4th place in their first season. So not too shabby for a brand new team.
Yeah, well, it's a club in a state with a lot of soccer history. Much of that soccer history comes from Milwaukee. You've had teams there since the 19 teens. Some of the oldest continuous soccer clubs in the United States come from Wisconsin. You think of the Milwaukee Bavarians and the Croatian Eagles, who've both been in existence since the 1920s. And Madison as well has had a lot of soccer history. You look back and you look at the university teams here, you look at the Madison 56ers, and of course, Breese Stevens Field, which is built in 1926, originally as a baseball stadium. It hosted NFL games in the 1920s. Jesse Owens ran an exhibition here. Even some Major League Baseball teams played exhibition games at Breese Stevens Field, and it's cool to feel like now we're embedded in that history, and we've been able to take a little bit of it and apply it to what we're doing in the present.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely one of my goals is to get out there for a match once sports resume and everything's normal with the world again.
It's a good goal for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
The matches
I was going to say, I have my list of, I want to visit every MLS stadium and a few others. Forward Madison is before, I'm pretty sure. I'd probably say outside of 5 MLS stadiums, I think that's probably one of the top ones I need to get to. Like I can skip over going to Soldier Field if it means I get to go to Breese.
Look, obviously I'm subjective here, but I've been to MLS games at a whole bunch of stadiums. I've been to, I want to say, like 4 different MLS stadiums, and the atmosphere didn't even approach what we have in Madison. Of course, these weren't like, the teams with 40,000, 50,000 people. I'll give you that. But still, it's a really special place. The stands are like right on top of the field. The fans are going crazy the whole game. It's the place to be.
Yeah, there's something to be said about a small field, small stadium atmosphere that just kind of, trumps these huge stadiums with nobody in them.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, speaking on me and Andrew's behalf, as Red Bull fans, we've been to games where, yes, you'll have, 2, 3, 4 sections of fans cheering the whole game, and that atmosphere is great, but the rest of the stadium is quiet on their phone and just kind of there. Like, yes, the numbers may look impressive, but as far as atmosphere, I'd rather have, a Forward Madison where everybody's cheering, everybody's involved in that atmosphere than these big stadiums where half people could be not bothered with what's actually going on in the field.
Adam, are you saying you'd rather go to Forward Madison games than Vancouver at home on a Wednesday?
I mean, absolutely.
You're mental. No, I agree, because we show up and we were in the South Ward for that game, and it was insane.
Yeah.
But then, when you left to go get like a hot dog or something, because that was dollar hot dog night, and it was dead, and you walk around and it's dead everywhere else, and again, it's nice if you have like in Atlanta where you have 70,000 people and they're all into it. But if you have a team that's kind of in the middle of, having a quarter of their fans being really into it, and the other 3 quarters is kind of like, I'm here, it's whatever. It's not the same.
Well, I mean, there's a depth and breadth of soccer culture in the United States, and it's been a lot of fun to watch it grow personally over the past decade or so, even. The number, not just the number of teams that have come into existence, but the supporters groups and the culture they adopt, and how each one can play off the back of each other and create something unique in so many different places. And it really gives us something to look forward to once we get out of our homes eventually.
Hopefully soon. I am going semi insane without sports and leaving my house.
Yeah.
Speaking of everything, obviously we hope everyone listening is, practicing social distancing. Everyone's doing what they can to help out. But as far as your job and Forward Madison is concerned, has this made your job busier now that there's no sports? Is it easier?
It's made it different. I'll say that. So because of how fast everything happened, we didn't have a ton of time to prepare. You can imagine that our primary goals, right? Sell tickets for the upcoming season, get everybody ready for that first home game at the beginning of April, have now just dramatically disappeared in a sense. And so you really have to take a step back and say, okay, we can't do this anymore. So what is it that we need to do? And in that sense, you're starting from a base level, actually. So once you start developing those goals, you know what your plan of attack online is. So some of the preliminary items that we've set on our agenda, right, are that we want to first keep fans engaged. We want to keep them with us through all of this. We also want to feel like we're a community asset, so something that people can turn to if they either want information or maybe just want some joy in their lives, right? Because I think that's something important that we can bring to people. And then the third thing will probably be finding revenues to bring in money financially, right? So if we can continue selling merchandise to people, that could be something that can keep us stable until we can start playing games again and get match day revenue again.
Yeah, it's been crazy to see the creativity that some of these Twitter and social media pages have done, especially around the soccer world. Like I saw you guys were playing Connect Four with Dulwich Hamlet FC in England.
They stopped playing, by the way. It's still their turn.
We're on the clock officially. But I know there's 128 team like online FIFA competition that's going on between professional teams that signed up. It's been refreshing is not probably the right word, but it's been interesting to see everyone kind of adapt. Yeah, adapt and kind of kill boredom their own unique way.
If you're looking for something, the USL actually has set up this big Rocket League tournament. And it's got teams from both League One and the Championship in it. So we're actually in a group with a bunch of USL Championship teams.
Cool. And I think Red Bull 2 are playing in that.
Yeah, are they? They probably are. Yeah,
I think so. I thought I saw that they nominated one of their players to play.
Well, we've got our captain, who's one of our midfielders, Brendan Eaton, and I think we're going to see how well he does. Or else I know we have some season ticket holders on the sideline who say they're pretty good at Rocket League. So if he drops a match or two, we might have to call in the alternates.
Contracts terminated.
I will say, never played that game. Never got into it. Yeah?
Andrew can attest that my FIFA skills are
subpar, and I'm going to be nice about it.
Something that I definitely should be working on.
Well, I've been thinking about all the ways we can try to get into the streaming business, right? Unfortunately, I only have a laptop, which makes it a little difficult when we're trying to stream, because you need some some better hardware. I streamed one of our matches from last year on Saturday, I believe, and my computer was overheating the whole time, but it made it. So we're gonna try that again Wednesday, and I've been thinking about maybe even though Fort Madison's not in FIFA, we're in Football Manager.
Yes.
We set out a Football Manager challenge last year for people to take a modified version of the game and lead us to glory. And maybe I could sit in front of my computer all day and stream that, and people could watch.
I'd watch it.
I'll be the first one in there.
I'm absolutely there.
Forward Madison's the Champions League. I'm down.
CONCACAF Champions League.
Yep.
We can do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to worry about the refs CONCACAFing you in the video game.
No, they still will. They still will.
Fair.
All right. So I guess now it's my turn to move into how Forward Madison gained all this traction on social media, and I come to two words really, and I believe they're on somebody's scarf. Full Mingo.
Wrong side.
Yeah. I remember that. I think this was the first time that I saw Forward Madison here. I tweeted something about Full Mingo and it got liked. And that's as soon as you liked it, I was like, I'm in. Like, full send in. So picture of a plastic flamingo during a blizzard, and you're measuring the snowfall based off of quarter Mingo, half Mingo, full Mingo. Where did this come from?
Yeah, I can tell you the story. It's an interesting story too, because you can use it as a vector through which to look at the way we do our whole operation on social media. So this was back in, I believe, January 2019. And it could have been February. There's a huge snowstorm in Madison. It kept coming down and coming down. And we were just trying to think of ideas to be creative with it. So at some point I went onto the field with a plastic flamingo that we had used in our name reveal ceremony. I took out the legs actually, because those would have held it up a little too high. And I put it in. It was about a quarter Mingo. So we said, hey, quarter Mingo. And I took it out and I went back to the office. And then I noticed that it was really gaining some traction. So the next day I pulled out the flamingo again, measured it. And this time it went up to where the neck was starting. So it was half Mingo. And then before I left the office that day, I did it one more time. And at that point, there was so much snow on the field. It had gotten, it was probably about a foot high, maybe a little bigger. And it had completely covered the flamingo. So we eventually said, okay, let's cover the entire flamingo. And someone on Facebook, his name is Mark Crosby. He's actually a member of the flock, was the first person to say something like, oh, it's going flamingo or something like that. So I took that and applied it to the photo. We had gone full Mingo. And from there, it just snowballed. It's not really something you can predict or expect, but people really liked it and it blew up. And the thing that I would say is we didn't just stop there, right? Because what Forward Madison is about is like trying to listen to what people have to say, trying to make this a supporter-oriented club in the sense that the fans can push us in the direction that they want to see us build. So once it started gaining popularity, we said, okay, this is something people like. How can we incorporate it? Hence why Full Mingo is our sort of tagline to this day. Hence why we made these scarves and shirts that say Full Mingo on them. Hence why we've taken that and run with it beyond just what could have been one tweet, but into a mentality that's driven this club forward. Excuse the pun.
It shocks me. There are two things that shock me. First of all, why has the U.S. not switched to a flamingo-based measurement system? I think that's clear and obviously the right way to go for the future. And two, you said that you're a club that cares about the way that its fans interact with it. And being a Red Bull fan, that's shocking to me, because I sit here and see my club not buy players, not get anywhere closer to MLS Cup, and just be content with being the Arsenal of MLS and just saying, fourth is good. It's a playoff spot, and we get deep in the playoffs and then lose, but it's okay because we made playoffs. And it baffles me that there are teams out there that care about what their fans think about their club. So kudos to you for being a part of an organization and leading that effort to show that you care about the people who support you.
Well, to the first point, I do think flamingos as a measuring tool makes a lot of sense.
Right?
It makes about as much sense as any other measuring tool, so why not? Exactly. I think the only thing is when you divide it up, like how you would divide a foot into inches, you would have to name the micro quantity, and you'd have to define that. And I think that's where the holdup might be right now. But to your second point, you do have some supporter shields. So that's
we do, and I will go and die on this hill that supporter shields back when we played every team are more important than MLS Cup. I will die on that hill. I will. And Adam disagrees with me, and that's okay.
I disagree with you now.
I think only a Red Bulls fan could die on that hill.
You're absolutely right.
I have to accept it because we're just not any closer to winning MLS Cup. It's just fact. I said before the season started we would be lucky to make the playoffs with the amount of quality players that we let go of this offseason. But I don't know. I like winning. I like the Supporter Shield. Obviously, Andrew and I – oh, no, you weren't there with me. I was there when they beat Atlanta to move, I think, within 1 point. So, basically, if Atlanta won that game –
it was theirs.
It was theirs. So
I watched that on TV.
Yeah, I was in the South Ward for that.
Yeah. And weren't Durans there too?
No, it was me and my brother and our friend Mike. But yeah, I think that Flamingo tweet was what got Andrew and I into following this club.
Oh, it absolutely for me. 100%.
Yeah. I think that was around the time where we were looking just around the world at different leagues, not necessarily the top league, so not in the Prem, because obviously Andrew and I have teams that we support already. Yes, I see you holding.
Go on, the lads.
But we had just recently started following a team in League Two in England in Forest Green Rovers. We were looking into Sky Blue FC, into the Women's League.
I follow them as much as I can, but they play at the same time as like every other team, so it's difficult when you only have two screens really to watch.
Yes,
but I followed them for a little bit last year.
They're moving to the Red Bull.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I think that was that kind of whole thing, and then we see this tweet, and we say, USL team sorted, done, nice and easy.
Yeah, it's incredible because you can have all of these interactions with people that 10 or 15 years ago, right? If you're a lower league club and you want to advertise yourself, the only way you can do that is through more traditional media, taking out newspaper advertisements, putting billboard ads or bus ads. But we're not a high budget team. We don't have the money to, cover the city with advertisements. So instead, we have to subvert that structure and do it through other media. Not only that, but we can do it better, right? You can have individual one-on-one interactions with people. And now it's not just your stories, but we have a season ticket holder in Switzerland who flew from Switzerland to come to one of our games last year.
Wow.
We have a
Unreal.
season ticket holder who lives in Orlando, who didn't make it to a home game last year, but he went to 4 away games. We have a season ticket holder, I believe, in Montana. We have a supporters group in Salt Lake City who drove 12 hours to Tucson to come see one of our away games. There was another set of fans there from New Mexico who drove to see us. So it's really just insane how you can build these connections with people that you've never met in person who live hundreds of miles away from you, just because you sort of have the same spirit and philosophy about how soccer should work.
Yeah, definitely.
I couldn't have put it better myself. And that speaks to how important it is to engage with your fans on social media, right? Because you need to grow somehow, and especially when you don't have a budget like an Atlanta or an LAFC or any really big name clubs, you need to find another outlet for that. And social media, especially in this day and age, is clearly the way to do it.
And right now, everyone's online too. So
Yeah, exactly. So segueing into social media and combining it with your job and the way that you came about this, do you have any advice for some of our listeners who may want to get into the digital media world? How to get started. Do you need to know somebody? Because I know you had spoken to kind of knowing somebody to get in on the ground floor, but do you need to go to school for it? Do you need to know somebody to get in? Any advice really?
I mean, I sort of stumbled into it, right? It wasn't something that I'd been training my life to do. I was just a fan that happened to become an employee for a club. I'm still not sure quite how it happened. So I guess then you don't need a specific degree, I would say. It's getting into it is a whole nother business, but it starts, I think, with a passion for the sport, and particularly with an understanding of soccer culture and how you think you should be interacting. So I think that's something that I always had, right? Again, I was a fan for a long time, and I participated in a lot of these online communities, and I sort of learned, subconsciously, not on purpose, what it was like to interact with other soccer fans online. So it ended up sort of falling into place naturally, that once I was here, it was continuing that same process.
Love that. And so comparatively, for a match day versus a non-match day, how do your posts on social media vary?
Well, we like to have some things scheduled out, but at the same time, there's a certain spontaneity that I think is integral in Forward Madison's online content, right? If you want to have fun and be a little silly and be a little ridiculous, then you always need to change directions with the wind sometimes, so to speak. So some of it is, content that we have planned day by day or week by week. For instance, our own podcast, which I really need to get a move on, because we've got some interviews recorded that I've got to put together. I've been sitting on for 2 weeks. Or for instance, some of the content we have going on right now, like we've got a regular weekly Zoom chat with some of our players that fans can partake in, or
Very cool.
we're hosting players doing workout videos on Facebook, things like that. But on the other hand, it might just be me or Kubo looking around and seeing what is popular, what's fun, and trying to engage with that.
Very cool. So before we move any further, if you ever need a guest on your podcast, we are always up for it.
Absolutely.
So one of the big things. First of all, let me throw in a question that actually isn't on here. You mentioned now that you've got a ton of different platforms that you'll post on. What is your most successful platform? Where do you find the most success out of your post in terms of engagement, fan reaction, things like that?
Oh, it's definitely Twitter without a doubt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm twisting myself there. It's the platform where you can really, I think, have these individual conversations with people in a way that is maybe more difficult on other platforms. It's also something where the shareability factor, I think, is more there, that you can have people retweet stuff and it gets a whole new set of eyes, uh, and and it's something where we feel it's all right to post a lot more in terms of quantity, because people are more willing to keep up with it as your feed is so connected to time and how quickly it moves. And it's something I think that we've embraced, right? It's been successful for us, and it's a way that we can keep in touch with how our fans are feeling, and not only that, but use that feeling to inform the decisions that we're making.
Love that. Really cool. One of the things that I think catches our eye specifically is your club shop and all the things that are in your club shop. Obviously, you have your jerseys, your training apparel, and your scarves, and then you've got your flamingos, obviously, gravy boats, and Adam's favorite, partially eaten potato art. Is that a play on the banana taped to the wall art exhibit that was a thing? What was that, like a few months ago, right over the summer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't read out the price.
Oh yes,
$240,000.
$240,000. That's art, baby. That's art.
Yeah, it was. It was back in December. That the banana duct tape to the wall was very popular. So we decided to play off our own version of it with a potato, which was actually something that had already been used in the Ford Madison lexicon or canon of visual props. So to really tell the story, you have to go back to the initial use of the potato, right? That we had sold merchandise in 49 states, but we're missing Idaho. So we decided the best way to get a buyer from Idaho was to sell 4 Madison branded potatoes. And we actually sold a whole bunch of them until our merchandise manager, Chase Egan, said, "No, I'm not going to be spending my whole day putting postage on potatoes. You got to stop this." so people knew about our potatoes, and when we wanted to make a play on the banana, we said, "Okay, we'll duct tape a potato to the wall." We put it up, and it was 120,000 initially, but then we had someone take a bite out of it, so it became 240,000, which is still a great deal because it's a lot less than what you'd buy the banana for.
Very true. Very true. And that was actually the next bullet point. We were going to backtrack and talk about your Forward Madison branded potato, and it has been sold to every state. And this actually proves to Adam that people live in Idaho. Adam is convinced that people don't live in Idaho.
Idaho's not a real place.
We
but-
shipped them somewhere.
However, did you also sell to countries abroad?
That's a little bit tougher because we don't have the in-store functionality to do international shipping. So instead, we tell people to contact us directly, and then we'll arrange it with them. So I don't think we sold any potatoes abroad, but we sold a lot of other stuff abroad. When we did the Football Manager Challenge, which I guess is still ongoing, but the prize for completing it was that you would get a letter a personalized letter signed by our head coach, which I can't really do now because I can't get our head coach to sign stuff while we're not in the office together, right? But it'll start up eventually again. Anyway, the point is that we had people from all across the world that I sent these letters to, from, I would say, 5 different continents.
Very neat.
Yeah, it was like from Uruguay to Singapore, to like every country in Europe, really. It was France, Romania, Sweden, Denmark, England, Scotland, whatever have you. And so we've made a lot of connections across the world through, I don't know, the way that we've connected to people online.
Is that how did you guys are one of, if not the only USL team who's played a team from the Bundesliga?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You had Hertha Berlin play a preseason game last season.
They did. When Hertha Berlin came here for their U.S. tour, one of their stops was for Madison. I mean, that's so cool to have a Bundesliga club, not just a Bundesliga club. I mean, it's Hertha Berlin. It's from Berlin. It's a team with a huge fan base coming to Madison, and I mean, it was such a fun night, and I think their players had fun with it as well. They even had a few of their players participate in the halftime inflatable flamingo race.
You love to see that. That's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about. So your away kit launch was kind of abnormal in a way. It was moved completely online to a YouTube channel. Did the reactions vary? And let me rephrase that. Did you get less interactions / reaction to your kit reveal because of it wasn't Twitter or it wasn't live? Or did you even reach a wider market because of YouTube being a huge platform in and of itself?
Well, it's an interesting story, right? Because we had scheduled our new away kit reveal for, I think the day was March 14th. And we were hoping to have, I don't know, 500, 600 people there in person at this big theater in downtown Madison. And then it was sort of like, well, this is not a good time for the mass gathering business. Maybe we ought to cancel it. But instead, I think it's a good example of how we can use the circumstances to do something in our benefit. So what we did instead is we moved the jersey launch to a YouTube live stream. Like you said, we streamed it all live from the 4 Madison offices. We had a handful of fans and staff there to essentially model the kits and to MC. And we did our event just online, virtually. And I think it probably had a wider potential reach than what we could have done in person, because you can go back and look at it. It's all up on our YouTube page now, but you can see the chat that was going towards it. It was going at a mile a minute, all these people commenting. And the jersey as well. I mean, it's incredible. We handed the design reins over to the flock, and they came up with a really cool sort of pink sash design. And the best part about it is that every season ticket holder has their name embedded in the kit, like between the sashes. And it was just a really creative way of showing that off, when we could have said, okay, we're just going to scrap this completely. Instead, we improvised and came up with something that I think worked super well.
Yeah, MLS clubs, take notice. This is how you do things.
This is how you do it, baby.
As much as I love some of the MLS kits this year, having every single kit be Adidas, having every single kit be the exact same design is boring. Let your fans design your jerseys. Put their name on it. Show you care about them, please. I beg you.
There's so much more they can do and they just say, all right, who's going to give us the most money to make the most boring kit in the world?
I mean, creative jersey design is a no-brainer, right? Because you want people to buy them, and especially again for lower league teams with smaller budgets. This is a way that you can get some more attention and also get people to buy your jersey by making them good looking, cool to wear, giving them a story, right?
Exactly.
Especially now, because jerseys are more like fashion statements almost. Like people just wear them around as everyday kind of things. Like the amount of jerseys I have from teams that I've never seen play or random countries.
Soccer jerseys more than any other sport too, unless you count golf, right? You could wear a polo.
Yes.
I'm going to pass the rest of this on to Adam. I need to plug in my laptop or I'm going to die. So
That's good.
Adam, go ahead.
Yeah. So just to close this out, we'll talk kind of hypothetical future of not only Forward Madison, but the USL and American soccer kind of as a whole. And this is a topic Andrew and I have spent, so much time discussing. But
We'll do this again.
Yeah. So,
and no one else in the world has actually talked about this here.
Nobody. We are literally on one.
No, never. This is brand new, totally original content. How do you think a promotion relegation system would work or would benefit a club like Forward Madison?
So it's interesting that you bring this up at this time because I mentioned earlier we've got a weekly web series. It's called Coffee with the Mingos, where you can chat with some of our players on Zoom. But we had the USL president, Jake Edwards, on the last one, and someone asked him this question actually. And it's on our YouTube. You should watch it because he gives a really compelling answer about like USL. This is something that they would like to do in the future between their leagues, and I think it would be fantastic for Forward Madison if we ever had the opportunity to move into a higher league. I think people would love to see us having the chance to compete at the next level. Who wouldn't? I mean, for a lower league team, right? You see the benefits, especially being at the bottom of the table without any professional league to move down to. Then of course there's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah. Doing research for this interview, I learned so much more about the USL system and the way it's designed, and you can obviously feel free to correct me, but the league that Forward Madison plays in has Forward Madison and 9 other teams to make up a 10-team league as League One. But then the championship has 2 divisions of 17 teams, or 2 conferences, I should say. So there's 34 teams in the championship and only 10 teams in League One. Why not make 2 divisions of 22 teams with a promotion relegation, and then it numbers-wise balances out more?
Well, I think to that point, depending on how things come out after the pandemic, right?
Yes.
There are a ton of USL League One expansion markets potentially lined up. From what I know, they've been talking to people from all sorts of cities, and as a very new league, right, you have to build this up.
Mm-hmm.
You look at where USL Championship, when it was still USL Pro a few years ago, was, and they had around 10 teams, probably not even a decade ago. So it's very possible that you can build up the number of teams pretty quickly. I think having some sort of promotion relegation system, rather than evening out the leagues numerically, would be a better device for evening out the leagues in terms of ability, right? It would give you an incentive to really invest in your team. It would give people an incentive to come and watch and potentially see you climb higher and higher and make that exciting, whether it's a push for promotion or battle against relegation. It could add some tension into it, and I think that's why the USL is considering it right now.
So let me ask my side of it, right? My big thing is a monetary idea where you mentioned that you're a small budget team and you rely heavily on your social media presence and your merchandise sales and your game sales to keep the club afloat, essentially. And I don't think you specifically as Forward Madison would have an issue if you were to, for whatever reason, go down, even though we know that if there was pro rel, you would be at the top of whatever the top division is forever.
Yes.
But if whatever happened, I don't think you as a team specifically would have an issue. However, there are teams where they struggle to bring fans in already. And if they went down and were labeled a lesser division team, they would lose even more fan support, more merchandise sales. All of that just ticks down. Plus, they don't get as much TV revenue, if there's TV revenue at all, depending on what league they're in. And that could cripple a team financially and force them to fold. And that's my argument to the other side of it, where it's a great idea on paper, but right now the football culture in America isn't there yet.
You're not worried about the Red Bulls, are you?
Well, if we're gonna go there, maybe, but I bring up the example of teams like Chicago, Columbus, and Colorado are going up, but Chicago is moving to Soldier Field and they're still $12K, and Columbus had just had this huge fight to stay in Columbus and they're bringing $14K. And if they were to be dropped and labeled a lesser team, especially Chicago, I think that number cuts in half at least. And then you're fighting for monetary survival.
Look, I think what you'd have to say is that this is something that almost every club in the world has to deal with, except in the United States. There are so many countries around the world that don't have as big a soccer culture. Well, maybe it's more concentrated, right? But I think people seriously underestimate how big soccer is in the United States. These teams, especially in MLS right now, are super popular. The TV deals are huge. The players are getting a lot of money compared to, I don't know, like mid-level international leagues that already support this style of promotion and relegation and find a way to make it work. I don't think it's as radical as we might sometimes make it out to be. It's, of course, the reason that it probably won't happen from the top level is exactly what you're saying, that owners who have already invested in a first division team don't want to have that investment stripped away from them. So then you have to deal within the confines of what you have. And it's probably why Forward Madison will never be promoted to Major League Soccer, because no one from Major League Soccer would be willing to go down. But if there's any way we could ever do it at USL level, that could potentially be a way to, build our own mousetrap.
That might be the single best response I've had to my point ever. It answered every question. It ever answered every, I'll use the term worry that I had with the system. And my one fear is the because I think you're right. It won't happen from top league to USL Championship because they're too worried that the major investors, the Robert Krafts, I don't think Atlanta has a big issue, or LAFC, just based off the talent that they have. But those big investors that put a lot of money at the beginning would just leave and let the team die. And that's markets that are gone, and the markets that might be coming up. We spoke about Forward Madison FC that has a big social media following, but Bree Stadium seats 4,000.
Yeah, and our city, I mean, it's a 250,000 person city. You look at us versus your team, New York City, how many millions of people? Like It's probably
Exactly. And I think
a
that's
lot of
the
times the size of Madison.
right. And exactly. And I think that's the big worry is that the big markets would bow out and it would cripple the financial structure of the top league. But I think that's a good point that if you want to do it between USL clubs, because I think you can definitely swing a deal in terms of TV, whatever TV deals that they have right now, you can expand that through all whatever. If you want to do championship to 1, championship to 1 to 2, however they want to do it, you could easily swing a deal where it won't cripple them financially. I just don't think MLS to USL championship is at that level yet.
So
Do
of
it.
course, as a counterpoint, I mean, you could never have a big professional sports team in a small city like Green Bay, Wisconsin, could you?
Never,
Never.
never. And for them to be successful too, forget about it.
Do it. What was I just gonna say? Do it like MLS has it now as far as TV deals. So ESPN does a great deal with ESPN Plus. It shows every game except the ones that are in your market. So
Every out of market game.
yes, which I know when the Open Cup exists that ESPN Plus will show the occasional MLS team versus a USL team, but I see no reason why they can't just say starting 2021, 2022 or whatever, we're now covering every USL championship, every USL League One game just to try to grow the sport and give a bigger exposure and say, these teams are out there.
Well, we are on ESPN Plus already.
Your league games are?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right. Well, when sports resume, that's on my list of things to watch.
And that's what I was saying before
Great
where
deal. You got all USL League One, all USL Championship, all MLS except if you're in the market, and all US Open Cup.
Perfect.
Plus, I mean, whatever other sports are worth watching, in your opinion.
No, that's it.
that's
the occasional Serie A game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say I'll catch Serie A every once in a while.
I will say though, we're still waiting for our first nationally televised Forward Madison game. That would be the pinnacle. If we could get on one of the real ESPN networks, that would be a lot of fun.
If every one of your followers and supporters writes a strongly worded letter to ESPN, I think we can convince them.
Definitely.
As long as we're playing games.
Yes. We're always on the so we don't have Connor here. Connor's usually our bringer down and is always the if we in the we'll say the A side, Adam and Andrew, we are always in the thought process of when, because it'll come back. And when it does, Forward Madison are going to tear things up. It's just going to be great.
Right. I think, I mean, you're exactly right on that. It's a little tough at the moment because we don't know where that light at the end of the tunnel is. But I think we all do recognize that, at some point we're going to be back. And when we are back, we want to be ready to go. We want to keep things going through this time of shutdown so that when we emerge, Forward Madison is still as strong as where we begin, and we can push on to even new heights, right?
Yep,
absolutely.
Also, never say never about Forward Madison, never being an MLS, because if Don Garber gets his way, MLS is going to have 120 teams in the league. So bring it on.
That's still not good enough for Adam. Adam wants 200.
I just want a worldwide Super League. Everybody plays, whoever, make it happen.
Maybe if we crowdfund the $200 million expansion fee.
There we go.
Hey, Sacramento's in.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, look at some of the USL Championship teams that don't include the academy teams. I mean, Phoenix Rising, Sacramento. I mean, even the Indy 11, they play in front of a stadium that holds 50, 60,000 people.
Yeah.
It's not impossible to say these teams can't go on to compete with MLS teams.
Yeah, certainly structurally there are
Right.
things that make it more difficult. But I think you can look at maybe the success story of a team like FC Cincinnati to see how, certainly if you have someone who's at least like it's very different from Forward Madison, right? Because they did have a billionaire owner who's able to spend all this money on marketing and getting people into the stadium, whereas not every team is going to be able to do that. But again, it shows that it's possible to build this cachet even at a lower level.
Yes. Andrew and I are both laughing because of my feelings toward FC Cincinnati.
We love it when a guest comes on and inadvertently brings up Adam's favorite team.
Yeah, something like that.
You did knock them out of the Open Cup, so
Yeah, we did. I watched that game on stream, and I was sitting there thinking we would be the team to get knocked out by a USL club in the semifinals, and then Brad just steps in and does his magic and puts us through to lose in a final again.
Yay!
One of these days, I'm gonna have a scarf up here that's gonna say MLS Cup champion.
Mm-hmm.
If you won the EMLS Cup this year, I don't know if they're doing that, but if you did and they made a scarf, would you get it?
Oh, I might have to, man. It might be the only time I actually get to celebrate something. It was funny. We were watching it this year. My brother supports NYC, and simply because I'm a Red Bull supporter, and they actually matched up in EMLS this year, and it was right in the middle where there were no sports on, like not because of what's going on now, but just because it was just a weird time in the sports schedule where it was just kind of dead all around. And we got so into it. Like we got all our supporters stuff on and we started like screaming at the computer and the TV. And my dad's kind of looking at us like, you guys are insane. But yeah, we got hyped for it. And of course,
who's insane now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Red Bull came out on top. So I got to make fun of him for, 10 minutes until we lost to FC Cincinnati, which was great.
I think, and I don't know if this was the final standings, but I think Cincinnati was at least up top for a while, if not the actual winner of the MLS.
So Cincinnati poached the winner of EMLS 1 from Philadelphia and just signed him after he won. So now they've got the best player in the league.
Nice.
Then Philadelphia had the NFL player who got beat like.
Oh my God, Jay Ajayi. That was
Ajayi.
They brought him in just for jokes. And
it doesn't matter. Marketing strategy. That's
the only one that I know. So
there you go.
Yeah, I saw that when they announced that he was their new EMLS player, and first thing I said was, doesn't matter if you lose every game 10-0,
which he did.
Master signing. That's going to bring so much attention to that team.
Oh my God, he got smacked. He played the NYC guy first, and it was awful.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
He started laughing, bro. He went down like 3-0 in the first 20 minutes, and he just put the control down and started laughing. He's like, "This is great," because he auto qualified because he was home.
Exactly.
So he auto qualified and gets smacked.
Yeah. Okay. Final point, and then we'll wrap this up. Forward Madison has recently become affiliated with Chicago Fire.
Oh, I just talk so bad about them. I'm sorry.
It's fine. As far as their official USL partner, thoughts on how this works? Is this different than having, let's say, a Red Bull in their academy team?
Yeah,
I know you guys were with Minnesota your first year.
Yeah, like you said, we had a partnership with Minnesota United our first year. That's like still sort of there, but we have a new primary agreement with the Chicago Fire this year, and yeah, it's totally different from being a two-team. We retain our independence, and what that means is that in both directions, player deals, right, have to work out for both teams. So if they're sending us players to Madison, then we'll say, hey, we want players who can actually contribute and help us win if we're going to put them in our starting 11. And at the same time, I think what you'll hear them saying are the benefits of having a team like for Madison is that they can get some of their young and exciting players a chance to grow in a really intense environment, to feel what it's like to be a real professional and play in front of a big crowd, which you don't necessarily always get with some of the two teams. So in that sense, it goes both ways. And then I know the coaching staffs have been working really closely as well in terms of how they've been communicating and looking at players. One of our players, Christian Diaz, who was on the USL All League team last year, was training with the Fire during preseason for a while. So we really think that it can, in that sense, bring benefits to both of us. And certainly for us, I mean, our main focus always is on winning USL League One, and having MLS caliber players on our team can definitely help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else, Adam, for?
I don't think so.
That's
You guys.
Oh, I got a good one.
Yeah, go.
What has been your favorite part about being social media or digital content manager? What was the one thing that stood out to you? Maybe not necessarily like putting out a tweet, but like the best part of your job, or the best interaction you've had.
My favorite part is the people, right? I think that's what can make any job meaningful. For me personally, I didn't know what I wanted to do coming out of college, but I knew that I wanted to have some effect on people and on community. And while that might typically look like something, say, in a political organizing job where you're knocking on doors or trying to do something that you think is good for the community in terms of volunteering or something like that, you can also accomplish that through a soccer club. And I think that's what we've been able to do, and what I've been able to experience is building a community through a soccer club and meeting all these different people who come from all these diverse places in Madison and even further around the world, getting to interact with them and see what they're like and why they want to be interested in Forward Madison, getting to interact with you, right? There's no other way that I would have the opportunity to do this. And I just think that's cooler than anything.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else, Adam? I know you were kind of jumping there.
Yeah. So we had obviously spoken about, Hertha Berlin coming down. You guys have played against several MLS teams. Is there a dream club that you would want to come visit and play against you guys?
A dream club. Wow. Oof. How many dream clubs can you have, right?
As many as you need.
I would say we're certainly developing a list of dream clubs. For me, right now I would put Dulwich Hamlet FC on there. Like you mentioned earlier, we've been playing Connect 4 with them on Twitter, but we developed this friendship overseas. They're a lower division English team, and they've also got pink and blue as their colors, and they're also like this really community oriented fan built team. So if Dulwich Hamlet ever has an American tour, I would love for Madison to be one of their stops.
Absolutely. That should have been the wager on the Connect 4 game. Loser goes to visit and play a game there.
Loser plays away.
Yeah.
All right. One more question for you, and it's more of a self-promotion for you. Where can they find both Forward Madison and yourself on social media, all forms?
Look, I'm not on social media as much personally. I've got a private Twitter account.
Really? That is shocking. For somebody who's so good at the social media game, that blows my mind.
Oh, I've got enough to take care of on my own. So, in my free time, I prefer to relax a bit. But Forward Madison's easy to find on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We've got a Twitch channel now. We're starting to stream on there. So if you've got a Twitch channel, definitely follow us on Twitch. We need to get our follower count up.
Do I have? I think I got that.
It's free with Amazon Prime.
And like I said, Adam and Andrew, if you check up on our YouTube page and you watch that Coffee with the Mingos with Jake Edwards on it, I think you'd find his answer on promotion and relegation really interesting.
Yeah, I will definitely
I
check that
will
out.
absolutely take a look at that. But if that's it, then that's it. Thank you again, Jason, so much for joining us tonight. This was a fantastic conversation, especially in a moment where sports are tough to come by. It's really cool to sit down with somebody who has inside knowledge on something like a professional sports team and kind of get stuff that you don't usually see every day. So thank you so much for coming in. We encourage everybody to go listen to anything that Forward Madison puts out, tweets, posts. Go look at it. Go support it. Go everything Forward Madison. Just become a part of it. It's a really, like I said, really supporter-based, family-based feel. We can't support it enough. Is there anything else you want to say before we end this off, Jason?
Well, thank you once again for having me. Like I said before, this is the fun part of it, getting to meet people I otherwise wouldn't have gotten to meet, to interact with people who love soccer just as much as I do. And I hope that even when you're sheltered in place, Forward Madison can bring you a little bit of joy, and whatever you do, you go full Mingo while doing it.
Yes.
Love it.
I almost don't need to end it. Guys, we got more things coming up in the next few weeks. We got an interview with former England youth, Tracy Blake. We have a whole other few things coming. I'm going to speed this up because that was the perfect ending. Follow us Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time on the Designated Players Podcast, and make sure you go full Mingo. See ya.